It's me, Mitch Murphy, the Redpill rapper on ThoughtCrimes.ca. Welcome back to another episode. We've got a very special sponsor for today, and that sponsor is Miss Fortune Cookie by David Kopp. His name is David, and his last name is Kopp. He sells the funniest, most delightful Miss Fortune cookies in the whole wide world. If you want to order some, look him up on Facebook under David Kopp, last name spelled K-O-P-P, or go to MissFortuneCookie.ca and ask David, have you heard of the Redpill rapper? And you will, in fact, receive 10% off whatever you're buying. He's got Valentine's Day cookies. He's got cookies roasting every different profession that you could ever want. You could even order cookies roasting the old Redpill rapper here if that's the kind of thing that you're into. Whatever you want, man, order them up and use that promo code. Now, we've got a very special guest with us today. He's a fellow Canadian Patriot broadcaster, man, and I'm honored that he would come on my show. He's a very big deal. He's making a whole bunch of noise in the country here today. Who are you, my man? Tell the people who you are.
Mark Freisen, the Grizzly Patriot.
Hey.
I'm trying to make as much noise as possible. Have been for a while.
Yeah, you're upset that nobody's wearing masks, right? You want everybody to wear masks all day?
I want them to wear at least 2, if not 5, because I need to laugh more.
Yeah, especially when they're alone in their car, right? That's when it's key to.
Yeah, I love that. I really do.
I saw one. Somebody was driving around. I think it was in Vancouver, and they had little masks pinned to their where the air comes out inside their car.
Yeah,
that's science. That's science.
Yeah, I like that. I like when people take them off and they hang them from their rearview mirror, and then they put it back on, and then they take it off, and they just repeat. And they're almost brownish blue because they're so dirty and disgusting. But hey, put it on your face, breathe that stuff in. It's great.
yeah. That's big government for you, hey. So, at what point did you figure out your stance on this Corona thing? And was it the initial 2-week lockdown, or was it further down the line? Where did you kind of clue into what was going on?
You know, when it first, I've gone through a couple of different stages. So when it first came out, and I remember hearing a few stories after Christmas, that week between Christmas and New Year's, of some sickness or illness coming out of China. Kept my ear to the ground, and then sort of when into January, it started to be a concern, and nobody really knew what it was. Nobody really understood what was happening, and so you pay attention, and in the back of my head, because I've been so focused and pay so much attention to the UN agenda, the Great Reset now. It was always in the back of my head. Well, is this what they're going to use? Is this what they're going to do to bring in that agenda? But I watched a fellow YouTuber who was also a PPC candidate as well, Frank Vaughn. I watched him in the initial stages, and he seemed to come to the table with a lot of good information, and Frank has always been credible to me. So I watched a lot of Frank's stuff, and of course, you took it for what it was, and we thought it was as advertised up until probably around the time mid-March, when they came out with the first lockdowns. I started to wonder, there's too many things happening, too many indicators telling me that, wait a minute, something's not lining up here. There's and even back then we were talking about ivermectin, we were talking about hydroxychloroquine, and then this whole mask thing. Again, as I'm watching Frank Vaughn promote the idea of everybody wearing a mask, I started to question it. In fact, I put on a respirator, with the 2 filters and everything, and I put on some sunglasses, and I walked into a bank, and the fact that I could do business with this thing on my face was like, okay, this is really weird. Anyway, so it was after that I started, okay, we got to look more into this, we got to look deeper into this. And then you start to see experts, then you start to see doctors and virologists and immunologists questioning what the narrative. And then even back then, there were some questions about the PCR testing, and you know, it was dribbling out some opposing views and some opposing evidence. So, you know, I think probably by late spring, you know, I was full on awakened to what this was being used for.
Yeah, and there was some threshold at some point where if you were paying any semblance of attention, it's undeniable that this is at the most boiled down version that it's been overblown. You know, that's
Right.
kind of given the most amount of credit to these people. But I've been very intrigued by the whole thing, and it's kind of exciting. As horrible as the whole thing is, it's kind of exciting because everybody that's been watching the globalists mobilize for decades and decades, we were all waiting for something like this. Like I don't mean to get too woo woo and out there, but I've been banking on a fake alien invasion. That's kind of what I think that is the big one. Like there was an old Ronald Reagan speech where he was saying, imagine how quick we would unify as a globe if we had some external threat like an alien invasion, you know? And but because that's what they need, is they need an existential threat to the whole world for us to, you know,
Right.
comply with this globalist agenda, you know? And this is perfect. Well,
you know, it's interesting because it's not like they never mentioned the pandemic or a pandemic, you know, coming. And, you know, thinking reasonably, as, you know, most of us try to do, and critically, yeah, you know what, a pandemic is probably something that could affect the planet, you know, all things being equal. So when this thing first came out, it's like, okay, you know, maybe this is what it is. And so I think most people, probably a very high percentage of people, probably accepted it for what it was sold as initially. I mean, why, you know, without any other science or any other thing, you know, but there was something in the back of my head that said, you know, there's something off here. There's something's not right. And of course, in context with the greater agenda, you know, all of those pieces fell into place pretty quickly.
So if you could kind of sum up, what do you think is the move here? What's their end game? You know, I mean, a lot of people have heard the buzzwords like the Great Reset and you know, the New World Order, things like that. But what do you think their best case scenario is? They being globalist people that like to use phrases like "build back better," you know, people that really like China. Where are they going? What are they trying to do here?
So, you know, there's a lot of theories, and I tend to stay away as much as I can from theories, although in a lot of cases they leave us no choice but to theorize, because they don't tell us what they're going to do. Although in this case, you know, they really have told us. And ultimately, you know, there's a lot of ideas, a lot of theories that may or may not be part of their goals and part of their agenda. But ultimately, this is about global governance. This is about destroying the nation state, the idea of the nation state. This is about destroying Western civilization in order to achieve these goals of global governance. So that's, I mean, ultimately, that's the end game. It's this global governance, destroy the nation state, destroy the industrialized world, destroy the Western civilization and what it represents in order to have this global governance. And that's governing with a convergence of communism and fascism through technocracy. And I mean, that's the pinnacle of all of this. And then what flows from that is, I mean, if you read Sustainable Development Agenda, it is the Communist Manifesto, just prettied up and made a lot more in depth. Essentially, that's what that is. And then enter, you know, the World Economic Forum and sort of the fascist end of things, the partnership between this global government, this new world order, and the communist agenda of the sustainable development. You know, that's kind of where we're at. In fact, in June of 2019, the World Economic Forum and the UN partnered to achieve the goals of the Great Reset and Sustainable Development, right? So, and I think this whole Great Reset narrative that they've thrown out there, I think it's a bit of a bait and switch. I think it's a bit of a marketing ploy, and so far it's failed miserably. But I think it's one of these things, you throw it out there, it's like a red herring, you get everybody to chase it. Meanwhile, over here, sustainable development goals are being instituted, are being brought in full, while Klaus Schwab, straight out of central casting, is trying to sell this Great Reset that then parties and governments that have historically supported the sustainable development agenda can con their members and their supporters by sort of railing against the Great Reset. And we've seen that with Pierre Poilievre when Trudeau announced to the world that their government is going to take advantage of this COVID situation for this reset and achieving the goals of sustainable development. And then Pierre came out with his petition and this sort of strong word against the Great Reset. But at the same time, he knows this, but most of the Canadians don't know this, that the Great Reset and Sustainable Development are the same thing. They partnered, again, as I said, in 2019 of June. So it's sort of this bait and switch game. It's sort of this, yeah, we're against the Great Reset. Even Jason Kenney out of Alberta, you know, he's talked in 3 different occasions about the Great Reset and denounces it. But at the same time, he's the same guy that was part of the Conservative Party who signed on to the Sustainable Development Agenda. Their government brought it into law in 2008. Harper signed it again in 2015. So talking out of both sides of his mouth. So that's, you know, ultimately it's all about global governance. It's all about the destruction of the West. And we've heard UN officials out of the IPCC and others like Christiana Figueres that say that it's incredibly important to destroy the industrialized world and usher in this new economic system, basically a socialist communist system. You know, so ultimately that's what this is. It's global governance and it's centralizing power, centralizing that governance in as it stands, an unelected foreign entity. Right. I mean, and I think to a certain degree, to a certain level, we've had global governance already. We're already under it. Anything that Trudeau has done since he's been elected has been in line with sustainable development and the 17 goals and the 169 targets, the 248 indicators. Every policy that he's come out with, regulation, new law or bill, is in line with that agenda. So we're already sort of under this pseudo global governance as we speak. So they just want to push it until they have full control.
Yeah, it sure seems like that. And I'm glad you brought up the Conservative Party because I'm in talks with a lot of people that feel like the best thing they can do is just band together and vote Conservative, you know. And if you ask them what do you think about Peter O'Toole, they all say the same thing. He's a tool, right? He's a real tool. But they're still gonna vote. And I've just been screaming at my friends that that's the wrong move. But I'm curious, with your history politically, what have your views been on the Conservative Party prior to the Andrew Scheer days? You know, what was your stance on back in the Harper days?
You know, there's some historical context, and I really wish people would do their homework, because, you know, for me, I was never part of the Conservative Party. I was never a member. I didn't. The last time I was a member of a federal party was the Reform Party, and that was when I was, you know, a teenager to my early 20s, and then of course they merged with. They turned into the Alliance, and then the Alliance merged with Peter MacKay and the Red Tories, and you know, basically the CPC was born. And as soon as I saw that happen, I knew the writing was on the wall, because we're talking about the Red Tories, the Mulrooney Tories, the same Mulrooney Tories, the PCs that signed on to the Sustainable Development Agenda, Agenda 21, in 1992. So when I saw that merge, I was very defeated. I was very discouraged. that they would make that move. And I understood the move. It was obviously in order for Harper, as it turned out, to get power, that was necessary. That merge in their eyes was necessary. I come from a different school of thought. My school of thought and my sort of thing is political integrity, values, principles actually matter. So, you know, don't sell out to the highest bidder just so you can get power. And you know, the reform had some momentum, and you know, they were the official opposition for a while, and so I was really discouraged. So I never joined that party once the merge happened, and I knew where they were going. I saw where they were going. We watched where they were going. I watched Harper utter the words on numerous occasions that Canada and Canadians are going to have to accept less sovereignty. We're going to have to accept this global governance model. And so, you know, the chances of me ever being part of that party were finished at that point. And, you know, we saw what they did. Again, they brought in the Sustainability Act in 2008. They brought it into law. And then again, signed it in 2015, 1 month before the election, setting the table for baby Trudeau to come in and fulfill all the goals. And that's, you know, that's why we see the attack on our energy industry, our oil and gas, all our industries really, and the sellout to the Chinese. And so I basically was a homeless politico until Maxime Bernier created the PPC. And even initially, I sort of rejected it out of hand, simply because, like everybody else thinks, well, I was just going to split the vote. But again, I got into a number of different debates with some of my friends that had already moved to the PPC. And, you know, I didn't cave in the debates, but what it did is it allowed me to sort of sit back and think again, you know, what are my values? You know, I value my country. I value its sovereignty. I value what it represents: freedom, liberty, justice, prosperity, all these things. And how can I, you know, stay true to my values, but not join this party that was created by Maxime Bernier that echoes all of my values, that supports all of those values. So, you know, at the end of the day, I joined the party, I helped build it, and then I ran as a candidate, and you know, the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that whole split the vote thing, what's your take on that? Because that's,
well,
sorry,
it drives me insane. The first thing that drives me insane, especially on social media, is the whole, we got to get Trudeau out. We got to get Trudeau out. And you made mention to it. We got to get Trudeau out. Well, okay, sure. I agree. I don't disagree with that statement. But to simply remove him, the puppet, the figurehead that he is, and replace him with another one who's just going to do the same, what are we accomplishing? Absolutely nothing. And so, you know, this whole movement to get Trudeau out in and of itself is just so shallow and so misguided. And so then, of course, then comes the split the vote discussion, and there's nothing to split. They're all over there. The Conservatives are all over there. Listen, when a party commits to an international agenda, a global agenda that is essentially based on the Communist Manifesto, well, your party is going to move to the left just naturally. It can't not move in that direction if that's what your party is supporting. And so this whole idea that, well, if we vote for the PPC, we're going to split the vote. Well, so what? Because there's no difference between the Conservatives and the Liberals. Absolutely nothing. Listen, all of our issues across the country, and we all have different sort of issues, province to province, region to region, but all of these issues that people are passionate about and angered about and frustrated about are all related to globalism. All of it. You can't name me an issue that isn't directly related as a consequence to the globalist agenda. And so when you're talking about liberals or conservatives, they're the same. They come at it differently. They use different wording. They spin it differently, like the whole carbon tax discussion, right? The Conservatives claim to not like the carbon tax, are going to get rid of the carbon tax. But they're going to meet the goals of the Paris Accord and the targets of Paris Accord through carbon pricing, which is exactly the same as a carbon tax, except it's indirect. So they're gonna fine and charge all of these big emitters. Well, what do those big emitters do? They push that cost onto the consumer anyway. So we're going to end up paying any way you cut it if this is what you plan to commit to, the Paris Accord. And of course they're committing to the Paris Accord because that's part of sustainable development, which they've committed to. So, you know, this whole discussion that, well, we're not splitting anything. There's one party federally that denounces the globalist agenda, denounces globalism, and stands for Canada First values. That's it. So I'm not splitting anything by supporting the PPC. Excuse me, the Conservatives, they're almost exactly the same as the Liberals. They just talk a little differently about the issues. But
yeah, and that's something that you know, it's very evident in the U.S. Their two-party trap, which it's kind of like you say, that's like the corporate globalist versus the corporate globalist, you know. And there, you know, there's subtle differences and that kind of thing, but it just, even with Trump, who, you know, I like Trump, and I'll tell you what I loved was I loved what Trump campaigned on, you know.
right.
He campaigned on, you know, looking back, I think he didn't accomplish as much as he could have, or I would have liked to have seen. But we're slipping into the same thing, and this fallacy of you know, like, there are a lot of really good-hearted liberal people that voted for a war criminal with dementia because they just got to get Trump out, you know. And we can't fall for the same thing. We can't fall, like, because we all know Trudeau's horrible. We all know that he's a mess and that he hates the, you know, the people of this country, and that he doesn't believe in a middle class. We all know these things. But we're going to end up voting somebody into power that wants to do the same thing, that has the same slogans. It's just a different letter in front of their name.
But you know,
Maxime was very different right off the hop, and watching him in those debate stages. And you know what? Whenever I see, especially a politician, whenever I see every large media outlet calling somebody a racist or a white supremacist or any of these things, I always look a little closer, because it's either that they're offensive or they're right. And I think with Maxime, I think he's just right. I think that's about it. Like, what do you know Max at all? Like, have you gotten to know him personally? Oh, you're muted there. We lost you.
Sorry, man. Yeah, I did mute it. But I just want to touch a little bit on what you said initially. So what they've done, what the establishment has been able to do for probably 40 years, is create this whole left-right dichotomy, this whole perception that it's either Republican or Democrat, it's either conservative or liberal, it's left or right. We have to start getting ourselves out of that trap, because, listen, I can go to anyone in my neighborhood, and you know, it's a pretty diverse neighborhood when it comes politically. I can walk to everyone's house, and there's a number of values that we all share, which, again, I'll mention them again: freedom, liberty, justice, prosperity, equality under the law. You know, all of these things that we all share, and we all want to be prosperous. We all want to have a good life. We all want to take care of our family. We all want to have good jobs, you know, all these things. And so that's what it all boils down to, because all of those values are under attack through globalism. It's not left-right anymore, and it shouldn't be. We have to get away from this whole left-right dichotomy, because what they've done is they've used that whole argument to create what appears to be an option. So you're either Republican or you're Democrat, or you're conservative or liberal. Well, no, the vast majority of Canadians, I would say, are in that mushy middle. And it's those Canadians, the vast majority of which, again, share the same common values. So we have to get out of this trap they've set us in and put us in. And that's sort of what Trump tried to do. But of course, the media frames him as a right-wing fascist, which, it's funny because fascism is just as far to the left as communism is, just a different branch. And so, you know, if we got down to the discussion of values, and it's really, at the end of the day, it's nationalism versus globalism. That's what this all boils down to. So I want to touch on that a bit. But yeah, I've met Max. I've spent some time with Max. I like the guy. You know, I'd like to see him get a little bit more vicious. I'd like to see him get a little bit more populist in his approach. But he's in a tough position. He's in a tough spot. The media gives him absolutely zero coverage, and that's by design. It's not that he couldn't be popular or that they couldn't sell advertisement by putting his face on the screen. They simply don't want to because he's very scary. His message is scary. What he represents is scary to the establishment.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I think that they learned by watching CNN get Donald Trump elected. I think that a lot of these big media institutions have figured out, and they've gotten a little bit smarter about their approach, is that if his face is not on the television, he doesn't exist, you know. But
right.
But it's my hope that they're underestimating new media outlets like you, Mark. You know, people that just can turn on the.
Well, that's where it is.
Yeah, just have some conviction and just get, you know, people behind a movement, because that's what grassroots is. You know, people used to go door to door handing out flyers, and now everyone's so scared because of the Kung flu that we got going on. Yeah. I'm hoping that we can just, you know, expand our reach, because there's got to be a lot of people that see what's going on. Like for me, my big thing is just the government expansion. Like I've been saying for a long time that even if it was this big, spooky, scary, bad man virus that we've been told that it is, that the answer still wouldn't be authoritarianism. The answer still wouldn't be to have government officials lock you in your house and fine you for not putting a diaper on your head. The answer is to give everybody the information and let them be free. Let them be free. Yeah. And is that something that that your party is down with, do you think? Or because
absolutely. I mean,
sorry to cut you off, Mark, but some of the framing I've heard is that Max would be just a right-wing authoritarian versus a left-wing authoritarian like Trudy. You know what I mean? What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, we are all about freedom. We are all about liberty, and that's why so many libertarians joined the party when Max created it. Max has sort of been at times labeled a libertarian, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He does have, of course, some conservative values as well, but ultimately, you know, it's freedom, it's fairness, it's responsibility, and respect. Those are the core values that he brought when he created the party. And if you look at his platform from a personal standpoint, you know, when he ran for the conservative leadership and the platform that he brought, it's all about individual freedom and making decisions, self-reliance, self-determination, smaller government, get out of people's lives. People are smart enough to figure things out on their own. Just give them the opportunity, open the market. Let's encourage free market. You know, one of the things that we're dealing with, again, that the establishment has destroyed is this idea of capitalism and the free market. We haven't seen that. I don't know. I'm 50 years old almost, and I'm not sure I've ever really seen the free market, because it's been crony capitalism. It's been essentially fascism for a long time, and this fake capitalism. So now capitalism is being blamed for all of the ills of the world and all of our economic problems. Has nothing to do with the free market, or nothing to do with capitalism. It's all crony capitalism. It's all bailouts. It's all government corporation partnerships, oligarchs, monopolies taking over, destroying small business. I mean, now we're really seeing it with the whole pandemic and this destruction of small business and the free market. But this is what they've been leading us into for probably 40 to 50 years. And so that's what we want to go back to. That's what the PPC sort of represents, the idea of free market capitalism and the freedom of exchange, one person to the other, and without the government sticking their fingers in every aspect of our life in this nanny state. Our values are vastly different than any other political party federally that Canada can offer. And but it's going to require people to think and to think critically and to open their mind and their ears and their eyes to, you know, the reality of things. And most folks don't have that time or dedicate any of that time to understand what's really happening. And that's our job. And you mentioned, you know, independent media, and it is our job. It's my job. It's your job. It's everybody that has a YouTube channel to get the information out, to spread the word. And that movement is growing, and it's great to see that movement grow and more people getting involved, because that's ultimately the only way we win this. It's an information war that we've been losing, but now we can start gaining some traction and getting the message out and informing people. You know, it's interesting when you say we have to reach, you know, through grassroots. Even through this pandemic, we have to find creative ways to get our message out. And of course, you know, we got involved in protesting and these sorts of things, and that's a great platform, and I, you know, support it. Obviously, I'm heavily involved. But one of the things that we're doing is, which is odd and weird to say, you know, given that we're supposed to live in a free country, I'm actually planning events throughout Saskatchewan that are clandestine, that are underground, and we're not advertising, we're not promoting, we're not telling anybody where these things are happening. But it's a way for us and communities at the grassroots level, at the ground level, to come together and discuss the issues and talk about the issues and educate some people that are open to the education and open to the information. So that's one of the things we're starting now. In fact, this coming week, I'm heading to a place, you know, going to meet with 100 folks or so, and we're going to have a chat. So those are the things that a lot of people need to do. I mean, protests are great, but they have limitations. And so, yeah, so between media, as long as we can hang on, you know, to the mainstream social media networks, there's lots of other ones cropping up now, so, which is good, and that's where we'll all go to. But it's a little bit frustrating because, you know, I'm trying to hang on to this mainstream social media platforms as long as possible. I'm sitting on 2 strikes right now on YouTube. I just got off a ban on Facebook, but I'm hanging on as long as I can, because that's where the mainstream people are. I don't want to be relegated to my echo chamber. I don't want to just sit and talk to people that already know what I'm going to say and already agree with what I'm saying. It's extremely frustrating. I want to get outside that echo chamber. Now, those echo chambers are growing, so I mean, that's a positive, but I, you know, I still want to reach people that you know, need to be reached, and actually in a lot of cases want to be reached, and that's through the mainstream social media platform. So it's a fine line we have to walk to try to survive on there. But I mean, ultimately we'll land somewhere else, and those will grow. And but again, that's why it's so important to get out in the community, talk to people face to face, and tell them, you know, what information you have, and this is why I base, you know, all my values are these, and this is the information I have that contradicts those values, and then hand it to them and let them figure it out, you know.
Yeah, and good for you for doing those events, man. And it's hard because it's, you know, since we do in fact live in COVID 1984, you know, you gotta have like security at the door, and because I'm involved in some similar things, allegedly. I'm not saying I am. And yeah, we're trying to do these meetups, and it's like you know, it really is COVID 1984 out there. It's insane. But once you get groups of people together and you all start complaining about these mandates and about these officials and what they're doing, you start to understand why church is illegal, you know, and why these gatherings are illegal, and all these things. It starts to make a lot of sense. Like, of course, because we all feel a certain kind of way after we leave these meetups. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you felt that, and I've felt it, and a lot of my friends have. Because
well, that's the reality. I mean,
on a screen enough, you know,
if you understand the context of what this pandemic is related to, then it all makes sense. But if you're only living in a bubble and you only see COVID for what the media is telling you it is, then it's this deadly virus that you have to lock yourself down and socially isolate and wear a diaper on your face. But if you understand the context behind this, that they've told us, Klaus Schwab wrote a book, COVID-19 and the Great Reset. Trudeau has told us they're using COVID as an opportunity for a reset and to bring in the goals of sustainable development. They've told us this. We've known this for a long time. But and if people understood the context of this pandemic, they would be in this, they'd be right out there with us, because they'd understand, wait a minute, this is all connected to a much bigger agenda. But most people don't have that context. They just see it for what they're being told it is, and that's it. So you have to expand their thinking. You have to expand their perception.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. And I've been just shocked, because I lived out in Alberta for about 5 years, but grew up out here in British Columbia. And coming back, you know, I had some assumptions about the general public. I assumed that everybody understood that the answer to bad speech is more speech, and that freedom should come before security. Like, some of these things that are just, they've always been obvious to me. That it's not something I realized I would have to debate. And so now with all these measures being put in place, and people are like, oh no, we need it because we're afraid. We're scared. So we need these things. And now I'm realizing I go to, like, and I don't mean to diminish people, I'm not above anyone, but it's as if I have to go back to kindergarten with a lot of people, you know. How do you start? I'm 24.
You know what? I just want to cut you off, because to me, that's phenomenal. And it makes me extremely happy to see young fellas like you doing what you're doing, and have that innate sense of freedom and what it means to be able to say what you want, and that person can say what they want, and you guys might be way over here and, you know, separated by your ideals and perceptions, but you're both talking. And that's where we get closer to the middle, and we get through all this crap. But right now they want to shut it all down. They want to control the narrative. It's a singular narrative, just like it was with climate change. Same thing with COVID. Same thing with anything. It's this whole cancel culture. If you don't align with the prevailing narrative, then you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a xenophobe, you're a COVIDiot, you're whatever. It doesn't matter. It's, as long as you don't agree, you're something terrible. So I just want to say how impressed I am that with young fellas like you, because it's so necessary to get the young guys like yourself and girls and whatever else out there and spreading this idea of freedom, because that is extremely contagious. We just need to get it out there.
Well,
so
yeah,
thank you.
And all, you know, my opposition, which kind of feels like it's everybody, like the whole world a little bit, but that's all right. You know, it's funny because I see the arguments they're making, and I'm not highly educated, right? I'm a plumber, and I rap in my spare time. Like, I'm nothing crazy, but I see these like logical fallacies going on all the time. Like this thing when Donald Trump got banned off Twitter and Facebook and all these places, people are saying, you know, these people that don't believe in private property are saying, well, it's a private business, they can do whatever they want. And I'm like, okay, fair enough, but don't you I thought we all agreed this was like a principle, something that we should follow on principle and demand of people in high that control the narrative, things like that. Like, but as soon as somebody gets removed that they have been told is Mr. Badman, they got no problem with it. They're like, yeah, get rid of him. He makes me feel bad. He says nasty things. I don't like it. Get rid of him. But these people have no idea that, like, the most vehement supporters of censorship, they're on the list. They're just last on the list, but they're going to the gulag too, man. Like, I don't know what happened. It must be the education or something. I don't know what happened with these people, man. It's out of control. But this is why I've teamed up with my friend Sarah. She's actually she's right here. She's making my dream come true right now. She just got me my new Resistance hoodie. I got to plug her. Do you mind if I do a quick plug there, Mark? Sorry.
Yeah, do it. Do it. No, it's all good.
That the right way. The Resistance. So it's this new clothing line that she's launched here in the Okanagan, and she's my new favorite sponsor. You know, I'm gonna be plugging her show every day, and I'm probably gonna wear this sweater every day. I'm switching from my Hugs Over Masks to the Resistance, because the Resistance is what you're talking about, man. And I think a lot of people aren't ready for how right we are, because they a big part of my message is that this curtailing narrative is not cool. It's not cool that all my favorite rappers tell me not to hug my mom on Christmas and to put a diaper on my face. It's not cool that all my favorite, you know, movie stars tell me who to vote for. These things aren't cool. They're not cool. And
What
so we
counterculture?
got to change the culture, right? We really have to change the culture and show people that liberation and freedom is the move. That's where we get to all be free. And yeah, we may be in more danger, but you know, I'm preaching to the choir talking to you here, Mark, but we got to get that message out because it's way better. It's way better. I want to be free. I don't want to be in the zoo where I get free food, free healthcare, pats on the head every day from people walking by. I want to live, man. I don't want to be all caged up the rest of my goddamn life. And I think we will if people keep, you know, believing that if they vote for somebody that they like, they're going to split the vote. And you know, these people that just they don't think these things through. But I've got a very important question for you, man, because I've been getting very involved with the Libertarian Party, and I can't see why you guys like you and guys like Max wouldn't join that party, and why you would start the PPC. Like, what is the real distinction between the two parties, man?
Well, I think I could have the same question. I could ask the same question, and you know, I like Moen. I like the leader of the Libertarian Party. I think he's a great guy. I invited him to speak on Canada Day in Ottawa. And I think there's very little daylight between the Libertarian Party and the PPC. There's a lot of crossover there. I think, and this is where I move away from the libertarian anarchist position, is I still believe that there has to be, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's a formal government or you're living in a community of people, you know, self-reliant and self-determined. There's still going to be a hierarchy. There's still going to be some sort of enforcement of rules. And I'm not at that point or that strong of a libertarian / anarchist that I don't think a society can function like that. I don't think it can function without that small form of government and enforcement of rules. I'm still, there's a part of me that thinks we need that, and I don't think there's a society that you could show me that doesn't require at least a certain level of that. So I think if there's a difference between the libertarians, anarchists, and the PPC, it would probably be that. But again, us compared to the rest of the establishment, we're far more less government, far more freedom, individual freedom, liberty, self-reliance, self-determination, those values. So I think, you know, again, why wouldn't Moen just pack up, come and be part of the PPC, or vice versa? I think to the mainstream, you know, Libertarian Party's been around for a long time. It's obviously a niche party, and I get it. I completely get it. And if the PPC weren't around, that's who I'd be with if I was going to support a federal party. But I think then, but to sell that idea, and again, it's this idea of almost no government that doesn't resonate with the majority of Canadians. And that's not to say those aren't values that I like and that I'll promote through the PPC. I just don't think it's a big enough message or a big enough tent to bring in or attract your mainstream middle mushy Canadian. I just, you know, so if there's a reason why that those two parties haven't joined forces, I'm going to say that's probably it. But I'd love to see it, and I think it could work. There's also egos, right? I mean, every party, which is probably one of the reasons people don't like the party system, and it's egos and agendas, and you know, Moen has his ideas and he wants to hold on to those ideas, and Max has his ideas and he wants to hold on to those ideas. So there's some ego and agendas involved.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess my take on it is that if I was president of Canada, presidentofcanada.ca, I would probably operate a lot like Max's platform. But I think it's my belief that the Overton window is so far in, you know, as far as like towards Costco, globalism, you know, Goldman Sachs, the central bank, like that's where everything is right now. That for us to get to where Max is at, it's my thinking that we need a maniac like Tim Moen, and I mean that with all respect. I've got a ton of respect for Tim Moen. But we need somebody that's kind of radical in office to get any of this stuff done, because it, you know, the amount of people in that room that are very involved in some pretty sick ideologies, you know, as far as you know, legislators and that kind of thing. I don't know, man. I just feel like we need a bull in the china shop to get anything done.
I don't
I'm
disagree.
pretty defeatist,
Yeah,
I guess, but
I don't disagree. We do need a lion, and you know, if I have any criticism of Max, again, you know, he's referred to and has this sort of legacy of Mad Max, but I haven't seen the Mad Max that I want to see, and I think we need to see as a populist movement, as a nationalist movement. You know, I don't necessarily see that as much as I'd like to out of Max, and so, you know, I'm a pretty strong proponent of Max, but I do have criticisms, and that would be one of them. So I think you're 100% right. I'm not even sure Tim Moen is that guy that, you know, inspires a nation of patriots to come together and take back our country. I'm not sure Tim's even that guy. But, you know, I guess either one of those guys or somebody else will come in and be that, if the desire is out there. Now that leads it to the rest of us, and so some people criticize Max a lot more than I do, and for that reason and many others, which also pisses me off, because it's like we have been conditioned to rely on one guy, the leader of a party, whatever party it is, whether it's Trudeau, whether it's Scheer, O'Toole, or whoever. You can go through the provincial leaders. Everyone seems to be conditioned to rely on that guy who leads the party. And I'm like, fuck that. This is our party, right? Like, you guys keep blaming Maxime Bernier. You keep blaming bullshit. You guys should actually take responsibility for your damn party, get involved, and do what's necessary to inspire the people in your community to support you. And everybody has a responsibility. Quit blaming the leader and quit giving all the credit to the leader. Like, take responsibility. This is your party. It's the people's party, for God's sake. Don't be whining and crying that they're not doing enough for you. Just do what you got to do, right? So I get a little bit upset when I hear people blaming it or giving credit to these leaders. It's like, you know what? Okay, so yeah, I give Max credit. He brought this party to the table. The values are bang on. Core values are right up my alley. But I have a responsibility as a Canadian, as somebody who loves my country and who wants to defend it. And as I consider myself to be a patriot, I got a lot of work to do on an individual basis, and I'm doing it. And other people are doing it, but more people need to do it and take that responsibility and run with it. So, you know, that's one of the things I think culturally we have to fix. One of my good friends, Salim Mansour, always says that, you know, politics is downstream from culture, and that's a true statement. It really is. And so people say, well, if you're going to change the culture, you got no chance. And I say, no, we do, because the culture that's been set up for the last 20, 30 years is based on perception. It's based on not reality. It's based on perception. It's based on narrative. It's based on vanity. It's based on all this mushy stuff. And if you're building a foundation for a culture, you don't build it on a swamp. And that's exactly what we're built on right now. Whereas the values that we share of responsibility, freedom, liberty, justice, prosperity, those are values that everybody shares. Those are values that are sitting on granite foundation. So can we turn that culture on a dime? I think we can. And you mentioned rap music, and you mentioned, you know, music has a big impact on culture, and your frustration at rappers saying we got to wear masks and do all this shit. That's not counterculture at all. But it's happening. So Pitbull is now, you know, it's out there that he's denouncing what's going on. He understands the globalism. He understands it's communism, and he's speaking out against it. Okay, that's going to move the dial. Then you have Tom McDonald, who just came out with Fake Woke. Phenomenal. I hate rap, but I've listened to that song probably about 10 times because I love it. It's exactly what a lot of people are thinking, and he's representing those people, and he's promoting those ideas, and I absolutely love it. That's what we're going to see more of, and we have to be positioned to support that counterculture, that change. And this is why you young guys are so bloody important to this movement, because you guys have the power to mold younger minds and direct them. You know, I got a couple of boys that are 20, 21 and 23, and they're just like you. They're awake, not woke. They're awake. They get it. They know what's happening. They even supported Trump, and I love to see that. And even in my campaign, you know, I'd be parked outside the Tim Hortons having my coffee on the phone, and more times than not, anybody that came up to my truck that had signs all over it were young guys. We're like the 20-year-olds coming up and thanking me for doing what I'm doing and telling me that they support me. And it's like, yes, I love it, because the young guys haven't been ingrained. They haven't been indoctrinated. Even though they've come through the school system, they're still malleable. You can still reach them. You can still get to them. And they understand the idea of freedom, right? So many boomers, forget about the boomers. You know, Gen Xers like myself, we're in it because we sort of on that line growing up. But man, there's a lot of Zoomers out there. Millennials, I don't know what happened to them. But the Zoomers are, in my experience, have been great, and we got to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I've got a similar take on the Zoomers, you know, and we saw them do some major damage with this GameStop thing, and there's hope for sure. There's hope because they, you know, they're coming into this broken world, this broken system, and like we've been going on a certain trajectory for decades, and this is where we've ended up. We've ended up, like you said, with a foundation built on a swamp, and it's a mess. And I think a lot of the Zoomers are looking around like, why would we keep doing the same thing? Why would we keep doing this? Like, the things that you say make us strong aren't making us strong. Yep. The more diverse we get, the more divided we get, you know, and the more that they push these things, the less diversity of thought we have. You know, I'm all for diversity, but
everything is upside down, right? This is upside down world. So when all of the politicians are screaming for diversity, they don't want diversity. They don't want the diversity of thought. They don't want the diversity of culture. They want a monoculture globally. They want to destroy nation states where each nation has its own beautiful culture. They want to destroy all that and create a monoculture. So when they're screaming diversity, they don't mean it. This is upside down world. This is whatever they're telling you, they're going to do the opposite. And this is what people need to understand. And then these youngsters that have fallen into this whole Antifa, Black Lives Matter
mess, man,
bullshit. I mean, anytime I see an Antifa person, my first question is, why are you doing the dirty work of the 1%? Why are you allowing yourself to be used by the 1% who's funding the organization you claim to be fighting with? Why do you accept that? Why are you all of a sudden you're sort of put out there as the counterculture, but you're not. You're doing the work of the 1%. You're doing the work of the globalists, for God's sake. George Soros funds these organizations. You're being used, and none of them have an answer to that, because it's like a light bulb goes on. Wait a minute, I think I am being used. Yeah, you are. You're a useful idiot being used by these 1%ers that you know have an agenda to destroy everything you claim to be defending. They say they're anti-fascist. Well, no, you're not. You're actually working for the fascists. You are an unpaid employee or a slave to the fascists, to the 1%. So good for you.
What's more fascist than you know, unelected officials deciding that small business is not essential and big global corporate interest is essential.
Yep,
And that's
exactly.
something I'm trying to get to some of these people, because we're starting to see Antifa showing up in Kelowna, and I roasted them so bad, Mark. I hope that you watch my video. It's called When Kelowna Health Experts Attack. I hope you watch it because it is hilarious, man. I roasted these guys bad. And it's like you say, they think that they're edgy and they think they're counterculture, but this kid is literally screaming into a megaphone on behalf of the bank, on behalf of the central bank. And it's like, we touched on the diversity thing, right? It's like these people's idea of diversity is like a diverse coalition of war criminals painting drones with rainbow colors and bombing hospitals in the Middle East, and then giving the no bid contracts to Halliburton to rebuild it. That's what diversity is to them. And people gotta wake the fuck up, man. It's a mess. They think they're edgy, they think they're cool, and it's not cool. They're screaming on behalf of the establishment. They're raging on behalf of the machine, man. We gotta get some of that energy and divert it away from the rage and just man, because like I know when I protest with my blue collar friends, my grassroots movement, we're so full of love, man. We're so happy. We feel great. And these counter protesters, their whole identity is in opposition to what we're doing. And it's because if we poke a couple holes in their narrative, the whole thing falls apart and they can't handle it. But if we could just get them to let go of the hatred and the vitriol, they could just divert all that energy into fighting the machine and fighting this disgusting, swampy establishment that is so pervasive. It's in every school. It's on your television. It's in your music. It's everywhere, man. Like, how do we get these kids to turn it around and come to our side? Because they actually agree with. They call themselves anarchists. They actually agree with us. They just don't know it. How do we get them over to our side, man? I don't understand.
Well, you're not going to do it by meeting them in the street with bats. I mean, we'll destroy them if that ever came to be, but you're going to do it. I think a lot of this, we tend to want to control the outcome in this, and we get frustrated when we can't. And I think I've gone through this, and not that I'll ever stop what I'm doing, but I have to understand and recognize that a lot of this is going to be natural, right? It's going to be a natural shift, and it's going to take a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And so it's interesting to watch this movement. I've been involved, for the last 3 some odd years heavily. But it's been interesting to watch because freedom lovers, people that love individual freedom, individuality, self-reliance, self-determination, you're bringing all of these type of people together, right? And that's our disadvantage in this culture war, because the left has this ability, because they're not individualists, they're not about individual freedom, they're collectivists, they're group thinkers. They're not autonomous individually, whereas we all are. So when we come together, we end up fighting amongst ourselves. We end up splitting into a bunch of different groups, which is okay. People need to get that. We need to accept that there's a whole bunch of groups that have formed out of this movement, and that's okay. They don't all have to be under one tent. We don't all have to be, moving as one unit. We can be platoons. We can be on different paths, going in the same direction, and at some point, this thing will naturally force us to converge and to meet. We're not there yet, so it's good what we're doing. We have to accept that. We have to get it and stop being so frustrated that we're not all united under one tent. But the left is the opposite. They are one big mob. They're a blob of one idea, singular thinking, group think. It's all about the revolution, not about the individual, right? But I think there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of youngsters coming out of the education system that don't understand this, and they think they're being part of something. They think they're being part of this movement, and they'll understand soon, and they'll recognize soon that they're being used, and they're not an individual. They have purple hair, or they have green hair, or they have whatever, and they think that's going to make them an individual. Well, no, it's just going to make you swallowed up by your collectivism. And I think that's a natural progression. So a lot of times we get frustrated that we can't fix this overnight. But I think naturally a lot of it's going to happen as long as a lot of us keep active in our own way, in our own individual way. You know, and guess what? That's diversity. That's actual natural diversity. And there's nothing wrong with that. But this forced diversity, well, you know, we've talked about that. It's the actual opposite is the outcome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I think that it's hard to, you know, explain to people what's going on, because like they'll, you know, it all stems from this virtue, what I would say fake, I would call it fake virtue myself, but that's just coming from my view. But they'll go to you know, an anti-fracking protest, right? And they feel like that's the virtuous thing to do because fracking is so bad that you'll light your tap water on fire, right? But really what they're going to accomplish is they'll stop us from pulling out our own natural resources so that we can buy it from overseas, blood oil that gets shipped on tankers over here that's refined by them. And if it's not that, then it's from little kids mining for cobalt and lithium, you know, that, and like that's not virtue. That's not virtue. If we did it ourselves, our country as a whole may pollute more, but as a world that they claim to care so much about, it'd be way less because we can keep an eye on it and we can keep the money here, you know, like it's just, the reality is very clear once you take a look at it, man. Once you look at it for what it is,
Yeah.
you know, it's not virtue what these people are standing for.
No, it isn't. And, you know, unfortunately, through the education system, they've been duped. They've been conned. And, you know, it's up to us to you know, present them another option. And this is why the exchange of ideas is so important. This is why free speech is so important. And they know that. And they know that. That's why they're canceling us. That's why they're shutting us down. That's why they don't want to. Because I don't know how many times I've invited openly anybody that happens to be listening to my stream or whatever. If you're on the left, come and join me. Get on my stream. I want to talk to you more than anybody else. And I want to have that civil debate. I want to have that discussion. I want to understand where you're coming from. And I want you to understand where I'm coming from. And I want your ideas to be scrutinized. And I want my ideas to be scrutinized. And then at the end, when it all flushes out and I'm right, then you'll be proven to be wrong. And maybe you'll recognize that your ideas don't hold any water. But they never will. They never do, because they know that. They know that they don't have an argument. It's like, I believe this and you have to believe it, or I ignore you and dismiss you and cancel you and whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's a big battle we have, but I think again, there will be a natural progression. And I mean, guys like myself who have been at it for 18 years, especially in terms of globalism, I'm really super frustrated at times because I seen this coming. I knew it was coming and I wanted to stop it before it got here, but I didn't. So here it is. But I got to recognize that, you know, mostly everybody isn't crazy like me and doesn't spend the time needing to understand the world like I am. So, you know, I have to pull back and understand people learn at their own pace. They learn it, you know, their own ways. And the best I can do is open the window for them so they can crawl through and, you know, learn on themselves. And it's working. I get a lot of people, and I always have to remind myself, because I get so many people sending me messages. Dave, did you see this? Look at this. Do you see what this is? I says, yeah, I do. Of course I do. And I want to say, yeah, of course I do. I've been saying it for 18 years. But I have to remember that people are all learning at their own pace, and they're finding things out on their own, which is fantastic, because that's when people take ownership and then they want to spread their truth that they've, you know, come in contact with. So it's all good, and we're moving in the right direction. I just ultimately I think we win, but we got a huge mountain to climb. But I think we win it. I mean, ultimately, we will win because we have that solid foundation. It's just how much pain we're going to have to go through before we get there.
Yeah, well, good times create weak men, right? That's kind of like that whole cycle that we're in.
100%.
Yeah, but we just, you know, people just got to keep at it. And well, the truth is so loud, man. I've got a lot of faith in the truth. Whether it's in my lifetime or the next, the truth has to come out, which is that, you know, freedom over security is the best way to structure your society. And to me, it's that simple. It really is that simple. It's just that that is a principle that you should have as a nation. But we have some big opposition, man. Like I had some really nice ladies that were trying to get me fired for having the wrong opinion. They emailed my corporate office of where I work, and one of the words that they used to, you know, tell them what a bad man I was nationalist. They said he's a nationalist, and that was among lots of other nasty things that we won't get into. But when did nationalist become a slur? When did that become something that you can use to get somebody fired? Because I thought that that was kind of a prerequisite for somebody that I was going to vote for, is that they have to be a nationalist. You know what I mean? I don't understand what happened with that, because I'm a nationalist and I didn't know that that was something I had to hide. I didn't know that was like some big thought crime that I had to, you know, be careful.
You know, I mean, even myself growing up in the 80s, going to high school in the 80s, nationalism was frowned upon. Hitler,
Really?
right? Hitler. And he was a national socialist. And so a nationalist. And so they've co-opted the whole term, the left has, to demonize anybody who is a nationalist. And it's real easy. I mean, look at the dictionary definition of nationalism. It's one who promotes the sovereignty of one's nation. That's it. That's it. And why is that a bad thing? And it isn't. But what they've done too is they've stuck colors in front of it, right? And just like the collectivists that they say are on the right, but they're just as far on the left as everybody else. These white nationalists, the actual Nazis, the actual skinheads.
All 6 of them in this country?
Yeah, exactly. All 12 of them. Right, exactly. You know, they're just as collectivist and on the left as the rest of them are. But so they use those 12 people to put us all into their boat because we promote nationalism without a color in front of it, but it doesn't matter. I happen to be white and I'm a nationalist. Well, that makes me automatically a white nationalist. And you know what? Okay, so be it. I'm white and I'm a nationalist. Make the distinction or don't, that's up to you. But I only promote the sovereignty of my nation and of course the values that this nation was created under. And you know, I mean, I just had Press Progress write another hit piece against me out of the blue, which means I must be over the target somewhere. But the headline was, Freedom Rally organizer is a racist and conspiracy theorist. This was the headline, right?
I saw that one, yeah.
They have no evidence and they never will, because I'm just simply not racist. I don't give a hoot what color you are. I care less. What I care about is your culture and and the values you believe in. I do care about that, and I should be able to, as a Canadian citizen, as you know, somebody that loves my country, I should be able to ask what your values are, and if your values aren't in line with our values, then I'm going to have a problem with it, regardless of your skin color, regardless of what country you came from. I don't care. It's about the values. And so, you know, they can do that. They can carry on. They can say and label me whatever they want to. At the end of the day, I'll stand to that and I'll debate them if they'd like, which they never do. But the fact of the matter is you can't prove that I'm racist. You can't prove that I'm a supremacist. You can't prove, because that proof doesn't exist.
Listen, man, I've got a lot of respect for that. That's something I've been saying for a long time, is that, and it's my biggest problem with the quote unquote conservatives and the quote unquote right wing, is that they're so afraid of being called names that they won't say anything. And something that you don't hear talked about a lot is that this new speak has been so cemented in our vocabulary and in our culture. And I think people really underestimate the real power of that, because that means that if you don't believe in the newspeak narrative, if you use words from the old days, like if you say retarded, or if you call your friend a fag, if you say these things, then the media is perfectly comfortable putting one of these words on you and labeling you one of these words. And it's, the problem isn't that, you know, most of these people anyway, the problem isn't that they're bigoted or anything like that. And the problem isn't even with their views or what they're saying. The problem is with the words. And that is, I don't think it's an accident, man, that they now have this club to beat people over the head with. And that's why they can get guys like Max. The media is perfectly comfortable smearing him. And even people like me and people like you, they've got no problem doing it. But the only reason that it's so easy for them is because we don't believe in this new speak narrative. We speak how we want, and we use words that we want, because we believe that what matters is what we're saying, not what word we used. You know, like, I think that's much more important, is what are you actually saying? And so when people call me names, I go, okay, maybe, I don't know. Like, I don't know what you mean by that word. I don't know what that word means. You call me whatever you want, but am I wrong? That's what I care about. Tell me if I'm wrong. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me why I'm wrong. And I think that if everybody just, like, that is so disarming to these people. That is so disarming, because these words don't mean what they used to. None of these words mean what they used to. They're totally redefined to mean anybody that doesn't believe in newspeak. And so,
well, and you know, like I say, I mean, we live in this upside down world and hypocrisy, and at the end of the day, they're actually, you know, like, we'll use racism, and you're racist, and I mean, that word is so thoroughly overused now that they're actually, and this is what happens with everything they do, the left eats its tail on everything. And they do it with racism, because now anybody that's actually going through any real racism is completely dismissed, because everyone uses that word. It doesn't mean anything. Totally. So anyone who's going through actual racism, which isn't that common, but it's still a thing with some people, but it's those people that are getting screwed over by this whole thing. And that's what the left does with everything. They abuse every word to you know, as part of the bigger collective, and it does such a disservice to the people they actually claim to be representing.
Absolutely,
so,
man.
Fuck
yeah,
them,
absolutely, right? And they sure do eat their own. They really do. And that's what I appreciate about what you were saying about the unity around freedom. And that is why I've got so much love for the PPC. I have dedicated kind of my whole thing to the Libertarian Party, but I would love nothing more than for PPC guys to get into power, man, because it's that freedom narrative that we need, and it has to get popularized, and these, you know, populism has to come back, you know, because left-wing populism is not populism. It's not. These you know, guys like Jagmeet Singh that are, you know, they'll promise like free dental and all these things and eating the rich. They're coming for you. Anybody who votes for these people, they're coming for you as well, you know. Like, historically, when, like, the last thing that these people need is more funding. That's pretty obvious to me. I think they got lots of money to work with. Most of it's going to the Clinton Foundation and building Nike factories in Africa. It's time to stop, man. It's time to stop. But something else I wanted to ask you is, with as far as your party, and this is kind of more a question for just your, I guess, your take, but kind of just the PPC in general. What do you got? What's your take on the bank, on the central bank?
Well, I don't like anything central. Let's just make that clear. I'm not a big fan of anything being centralized. I like things being, you know, spread about. So the central bank, I don't want to see a small amount of people in control of my life, and in control of my country, and in control of, you know, the world. And that's essentially what we're seeing with central banks. And so decentralization is the name of the game for me. And that goes for the banks too, to make it a simple answer. It could have been a lot longer answer, but yeah, I think decentralization is where we need to be. I know that there's some people that disagree with that, but so be it. I don't like power centralized, including the banks.
Well, with that answer, I hope that you don't have a sunroof, man, or a convertible. I hope you're driving a big bulletproof SUV, my man.
I got a big F-350 dually, so I'm good.
Right on, right on. Because yeah, to me that's a very important question, and it's a bit of a litmus test for me, man. Like anybody that's running for office, that's a big one. Because as far as I can tell, that's like our biggest problem, and they're so good at keeping us fighting each other. You know, like
Yeah.
again, back to that Antifa kid in Kelowna that's just like screaming on behalf of the bank into his microphone. You know, they have guys like me that'll be sympathetic to certain groups, and guys like him that'll be sympathetic to certain groups. And then, you know, like things happen, you know, groups clash, and bad things can go down when really we actually agree with each other. We just don't know it. You
Yeah.
know, I
No,
and
that's true. It is.
I think
100%.
I think unity around liberation and unity around freedom is something that we can all come together on. And then once we achieve liberation, then we can go back to debating left versus right. You know,
Yep.
maybe then I'll be
100%.
comfortable calling myself right wing or conservative or whatever. But right
Yep.
now, all I care about is getting people around that freedom narrative, because we got to come
Well,
together, because we're not free and we're not liberated.
well,
Like, I don't know about you, Mark. I don't feel free, man.
no, and you know, we mentioned it before, but it's important to mention it again. There's a lot of folks on the left that don't understand that there's been this convergence. I mean, when they talk about the New World Order, this is what they mean. It's a convergence of fascism and communism. They're arch enemies historically, and a lot of the Antifa are sort of reincarnating themselves after the commies, you know, in Germany and in Europe back in the 20s and 30s. And a completely different situation has happened. And it's not about the fascists versus the communists. They're together now. They've merged. And they both stand against freedom. They both stand against the individual. And so the left has to understand these useful idiots, as I refer to them as. They have to get that. They have to wrap their head around that. This isn't the old days. This is a new animal that the people have to come together under populism, real populism, to defeat. Or they're just going to continue to be used until they're not useful anymore, and they'll be discarded just like they were back in the day.
I totally agree, man. I think that's what they have to do, and I feel like it's only fair to come at the right wing a little bit too. I think if the right wing people, it's like, if you think that children can't consent to puberty blockers, then let them call you a transphobe. And if you think that 250,000+ immigrants a year in this country is too much, let them call you a xenophobe. You know, if you have these beliefs, let them call you whatever they want. I think that they're wrong for calling you those names. I should make that clear. But let them call you that, and then make them tell you why you're wrong, because you're not wrong. You know, if you believe that a 10-year-old doesn't have the ability to make a life-altering decision that affects their bone density and their reproductive rights, like if that's what you think, you're correct, okay? And fuck anybody who tells you that you're wrong. Sorry, Thought Crime Alert, Jack Clausen Radio Network, but just that's the move, man. And we can all come together, because we can all find a lot of common ground on cultural issues, economic issues, political issues, all these things. I think we've got way more common ground than we've been led to believe. I really think so.
Well, we whine about the cancel culture, but it's actually, you know, a lot of the folks on the right cancel themselves because they're so scared. They don't have a backbone. There's no courage. Like, I could care less what Press Progress or any of these other mainstream douchebags call me. I could care less. I don't care. You know, does it make my life a little more difficult? Sure, in terms of, you know, trying to run my business and having my business attacked online because, you know, I'm outspoken and I stand to my principles. But that's the path I've chosen. I'm willing to accept that, and I'll do what I have to take to defend myself. But I'm not, that doesn't mean, you know, all these people that just, you know, they acquiesce, they submit, and they're apologizing for something they believe in. It's sickening. It drives me crazy. Like, we know what the left is going to do. We know what they're going to say. Stand on your values, stand on your principles, take the heat, be the tip of the spear. You know, like, or it doesn't matter to you. And see, this is the problem. A lot of the problem with our culture, and again, it's easily turned, but the problem is it's this throwaway culture. Everything has to be immediate. There's this immediate gratification that we all seem to need. And so these immediate consequences come to people who open their mouth, And right away they go and hide and they apologize and they cower. And it's because it's this immediate consequence. Well, who gives a shit about the immediate consequence? The more important thing is what you believe in and the values that you stand for. And you'll push through this swamp and you'll push through the consequences and you'll actually come out on top at the other end. But nobody thinks past their nose. It's all this immediate, you know, satisfaction and gratification. And so, you know, people have to get out of that. And it's going to take some leaders to do it. It's going to take some strong leaders to do it, to push through and show people this is what you do when you push through the BS. When you stand on your values and your principles, you're going to get through the immediate consequence of these statements. You know, I mean, I can remember a couple of years, 3 years ago, when I first really got heavily into this, and I was one of the only people screaming against globalism, and I was cast off as conspiracy theorist. Well, I have been for about 18 years. But, you know, I'm completely dismissed. I'm degraded. I'm ridiculed, you know, for stating the truth. And I didn't back down from it because it's the truth, for God's sake. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And now all of a sudden, of course, everybody's denouncing global, not everybody, but lots of people are denouncing it because we broke that glass ceiling that they like to talk about, right? We bust through that because it's the truth. Now, of course, the globalists and the Trudeaus of the world, they gave us, you know, a little bit of a boost when they openly admit it, and Klaus Schwab and whoever else. But we're right. We're still right. We were right 20 years ago. We were right 10 years ago, and we're right today. And we're going to continue to be right because we stand on granite foundation. We stand on values and principles and truth. And so take the storm, take a little bit of the heat as you're going through this. Get some balls, get some parts, get a backbone, and stand to your convictions.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And guys like you deserve credit because it's hard right now. And I can't even imagine, you know, it must have been a lot worse back in the day. Because man, the opposition is strong. It's strong, and they're so mean, Mark. They're so mean. These people that stand for virtue are brutal, man. Like I can't tell you how many people I've had look me in the eyes and tell me that they hope my family dies of corona, you know, and like things like that, and just like the most god awful shit that wouldn't even come into my head to say to somebody. You know, somebody could like kill my mother, and I wouldn't think to say that to them. You know,
well,
like,
you know what?
Insane.
I was a prison guard for 25 years, and so I developed a lot of scar tissue along the way. You know, threats and serious threats, and you know, called everything you could possibly be called. And it's, to me, it's water off a duck's back. It really doesn't. You know, the only time that any of this could actually have an effect on me is if they were right, and they're not. So why would it bother me? It doesn't bother me in the least. I mean, I actually appreciate Press Progress giving me a platform and raising my celebrity, or my whatever you want to call it, because now other people are exposed. Hey, who's that guy? I gotta check that out. This Press Progress, we know they're a commie rag. We know they're full of shit, but they're talking about this guy. So hey, I'm gonna go check him out. So thanks, Press Progress. You know, I love it. Do it more.
Totally, man, totally. And it's these little red pill moments, you know, like your, I believe it was your rally that I saw that was on antihate.ca, right? And I was trying to look at that website as like an objective observer. But man, you look at it and it's like, first of all that website is hate, and it's just doxing people for wrong think, you know, and even some really reasonable people, man, really, really reasonable people. But it's this hateful website that has a sticker on the bottom, funded by the government of Canada, you know. And then you see like this rally on there, and it's okay, PCR test rally, right? Is that the one that made it on there? And so,
I
you know,
think so.
But you know, I'm looking at the footage of some of this rally, and like I'm seeing people that are giving speeches, and they're saying things like, you know, the WHO recommended that we drop down to 25 cycles for the PCR test, and Canada is still doing 40 to 45 cycles. And I'm going, man, No wonder they're calling this racist. No wonder they gotta just do that, because of course, man, it all makes sense. And enough people need to have that little just paradigm shift red pill moment where they see it for what it is. They see through, oh, of course the federal government is funding this. Of course it's called antihate.com. Of course everybody who writes for this website is self-described Antifa on their Twitter bio. Like, of course, it all makes sense. It all comes together, and we just, you know, all we got to do is just kind of plant some seeds in people's heads and let those grow into thought trees, man. Because the truth, like you say, it's the truth. It's the truth. And if something is true, it doesn't matter if 99% of the population believes something else. The objective truth is truth. And this globalism movement is based on a bedrock of propping up small groups of people on the backs of large numbers of little people. And that is objectively wrong and despicable and evil. And we should fight against it, man. We should write signs and yell at traffic every weekend, and we should call up our legislators. We should do these things. And it's cool to do these things. It's not cool to put a diaper on your face and let your elderly relatives die in isolation. You know, that's not cool. 100%. And we just got to get these messages out to the people, man.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. Well said.
And I'm so appreciative of you coming on my show. I really am. It means a lot, especially with your audience, man. It does a lot for me and my show, and it means a lot. And it means a lot that guys like you have been at this for so long. You know what I mean? It must have been a brutal struggle, and I don't doubt that you've sacrificed, and I don't doubt that you've hurt over this, man. And I want to say thank you for all your work, man, for real.
Yeah, I mean, there's sacrifice and there's consequence, but you know what? I'm it's the fight I'm in. I have no choice. It's in my DNA, and I'll go to the end with it, and we will win, and it'll all be worthwhile, and I can actually go to my grave whenever that is and say, you know what, I did something that meant something, and a lot of people can't say that. So, it is what it is. We'll carry on and we'll keep fighting, and our army will keep growing. There's no question in my mind.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So I appreciate you having me on, and I obviously you're invited onto my show whenever we can put it together.
Awesome, man. I'd love that. I'd love that a lot. Do you have anything you want to plug before we take off here?
Well, I got my organization that I created about a year ago now, and the Forum for Canadian Sovereignty. So that's sort of the mothership that I'm basing everything out of. I created it after the election in 2019 as a way to come at people from a nonpartisan perspective, from a nonpartisan view, to get people to listen, to get people to try to understand what's happening in the world when they have questions and they're confused. Have a place where they can go to learn something and be, when we first created it, the idea and the mission was to go, we were going to do a national tour and then grow it from those speaking engagements across the country, so that other people in these provinces could go to their smaller communities and disseminate some information and grow it that way. But of course, with this whole pandemic, all that went out the window. So we really jumped on the whole protest movement, which is fine. It is what it is. But ultimately, that's, it's an information war we're in, and it's about getting the information out to the masses any means possible. So any support that people can give us is greatly appreciated. And you can find us at www.standfor4freedom.ca. So standforfreedom.ca or ffcs.info. That works as well. So, and of course, I got my YouTube channel, Grizzly Patriot. I'm on all the alternatives as well. Just search Grizzly Patriot if you want to find me on any of the alternative video platforms. And of course, Facebook and Twitter and the regular.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I love it. And I love you people who have allowed us into your ear holes for the last little while. You are fantastic, whether you're listening on the Jack Clausen Radio Network, watching on YouTube, watching on my Patreon, Mitch Murphy. We love you and we appreciate you. We just want you to be brave. We just want you to live free. We just want you to go home and hug your family and take your vitamin D. That's it. Everybody relax. We're not so bad. We're not what the newspaper said. It's all good.
Live by your values and defend those values, and you do that, and we're all golden.
That's it, man. We'll be just fine. All right, man. God bless you, brother. Thanks again for coming on. You take care.
You too, my man.
Everything I can, got my feet up in the sand and about to crack a can, like sipping. This is what good living could be really like. Now come on over here and don't you be shy. Come on, sit beside me, I will not be telling lies. Now look me in my eyes and you might just realize that realize, always realize, coming from the people that be looking out two sides. They got double vision and they got the devil vision from the television, like they've been out hella fishing, trying to win the competition. All their morals they are ditching, they are always bitching while they're cooking in the kitchen, like they're doing long division, like they're lacking in nutrition, like they got a crack addiction, like they got a mass affliction, like a mattress they are flipping, like a duchess they are hitting, they will not stop.
It's like dog and dog and dog. I'm not gonna listen anymore, man. You know what?
It's like I'm a good man, I do everything I can, got my feet up in the sand and about to crack a can, like sipping. This is what good living could be really like. I'm a good man, I do everything I can, got my feet up in the sand and about to crack a can, like sipping. This is what good living could be really like. Now I am not like Batman, I am just a bad man. I'm about my bread, man, do not roam with a Pac-Man. I'm breaking my back, man, hungry like a Pac-Man, working till I'm dead, man. Never do a keg stand, I could pull right through it when you could not do it, man. I'ma really do it, I'ma really pull through it. I'm a bad motherfucker and I know that I am. I can never quit it cause I always gotta win it. Every time I'm playing Quidditch I just always go and snitch it, cause my brain is way smarter, like my name is Harry Potter, cause I never carry water for that other team. Looking like it's time to kick my feet up, light up that blunt, let's light that weed up. I am smoking till I'm wheezing, coughing hard and I keep sneezing. I'm a good man, I do everything I can, got my feet up in the sand and about to crack a can, like sipping. This is what good living could be really like. I'm a good man, I do everything I can, got my feet up in the sand and about to crack a can, like sipping. This is what good living could be really like. I'm a